I honestly have no idea how this kind of thing happened. This session was supposed to be an easy run through an orc cave, maybe a bit of uneventful RP because one of the players had to bounce toward the end. What originally was a 30-minute maximum interaction with some paladins became 2 hours of epic storytelling and demoralizing horror. This story is so important that I had to put 2 other D&D videos on the shelf so I could make this one. I can't even edit this video how I normally do, which is why you're seeing some gameplay of something instead of the normal slideshow I usually throw together. There will still be some related memes thrown in where it's needed, so don't worry too much. Also, this video is going to have 3 chapters in order to make things easier to organize for me and you. So sit back, strap in, and keep your lunch down, because this is going to be a bumpy ride. Roll call. We have Jack returning as Dungeon Master, the DM we will be breaking. He's returning from the Matsu the Great story, and is running our second playthrough of the Lost Mines of Phandelver with a twist. Long rests are 24 hours, and an introduction of a wound table has been implemented. The wound table works alongside our HP. Characters can take wounds instead of damage, and are forced to take a wound if hit with a natural 20. And 3 wounds drops you unconscious. We are also using Norse mythology, and have a ruling religious faction with an aversion to arcane magic. Mostly wizards and other non-church-affiliated spellcasters, getting the stink eye from those affiliated with the church. The characters consist of Tyrion, a Robin Hood-esque rogue that fought for justice the church wasn't giving. Nar, a wood elf cleric of the church that holds the tenets laxly, aside from a complete lack of empathy for monsters. Floki, a halfling warlock fanatic of the gods, acting a bit crazed most of the time. Moba, a barbarian working for the church and bearing the magical scars of his troubled past. And my character, Paul, a divine sorcerer trying to hide his powers and driven to action by the visions he gets from the gods. We've not completed much of this campaign so far. We got to Phandalin, went back and saved Sildar Hallwinter, we spoke to the Wood Witch Agatha about the location of a spellbook, and had our first encounter with the Red Brands. That Red Brand encounter is where things start to snowball. We beat them handily, and even managed to keep Tyrion's position in the Red Brands under wraps. Tyrion had managed to infiltrate them in order to keep an eye on them and keep our party informed. That night after we were attacked, Tyrion was brought along with other Red Brands to kill us in the night. Tyrion used the opportunity to sneak into my room and wake me up. Tyrion convinced them to let him into my room so that he could save my life, as sorcerers are very squishy, and I would have likely died if he hadn't pulled it off. We managed to dispatch all of the Red Brands that had come to kill us, and we questioned the innkeeper that had given them our keys. Here is where Jack diverts from the game with a small change to the innkeeper Toblin's character. Toblin was being forced to help the Red Brands because his wife was a werewolf. The leader of the Red Brands, the Glass Staff, had given Toblin and his wife, Toblina, a set of magical silver chains that kept her locked in the cellar of the inn if Toblin kept the Red Brands informed on adventurers passing through town. The party was almost split down the middle on what to do. Nar and Moba, being servants of the church, wanted to kill Toblin and Toblina on the spot for murder, heresy, and other crimes against the church. Paul and Tyrion were empathetic and wanted to see Toblina cured. Floki wanted to turn the werewolf on the Red Brands in a bloodthirsty rampage. We did not entertain this idea. Eventually, spells and swords flew, knocking out Moba after his wounds from the Red Brand assassins, and Nar was left cornered with spells and arrows ready to drop him. Nar, frustrated, left the inn. We used what was left of my magic to get Moba on his feet and asked him how he felt. Moba decided to leave the issue to us, go home, and figure out what he needed to do with his life. Nar ran off to the small chapel in town, and had the priestess, Gorella, send a raven to Neverwinter, and rode off to start a crusade. The remaining party members went to the chapel as well, hoping to get a hold of a remove curse scroll discreetly, not knowing that Gorilla was already told what had happened. When they got there, she was already preparing the scroll. Gorilla had an obligation to the church, but they can't kill a werewolf if there isn't a werewolf. She wanted us to save her friend. We got the scroll in the morning and broke the curse on Toblina, forcing her fangs and claws from her body as her werewolf persona was destroyed. Floki collected the werewolf parts. Then the party left town for a few days to avoid the Red Brands and deal with the orcs of Wyvern Tor. On the way to said orcs, we picked up Sweet Michael, one of the Red Brands we had beaten the day before, and Eris, an elderly druid running from his wife Agatha the Wood Witch. These are our replacements for Nar and Moba. Only one thing happened in that cave that is relevant to the story, and that was that Paul suffered internal bleeding for a few weeks after getting smashed by an ogre. After dealing with the orcs, we immediately went back to Phandalin and found that the Inquisition and Nar were already there and had captured Toblin and Toblina. Tyrion ran off, meaning his player went home. Sweet Michael went to the Red Brand's base. Eros escaped as a cat, while Paul and Floki tried to blend into the crowd. Our blending check failed. Nar noticed me, and a paladin came to detain me. Unfortunately, I had taken the task of getting rid of the chains and forgotten about it, so we were about to get caught. I had Floki reach inside my bag and grab them. He used a spell to disguise them as a heavy, clunky loaf of bread. The citizens around us heard the clinks and clanks, but saw a loaf of bread, and the paladin was too far away to hear and let Paul know a child had just stolen bread from my pack. Paul played it off fine and was detained for questioning. Toblin and Toblina were kept in the cells in Town Hall, while Paul was questioned in the inn. The leader of the Inquisition, a paladin named Ellis, put on a ring and told me it would compel me to speak the truth. Paul has a problem trusting the church, as his inherently mixed arcane and divine natures tends to get him into trouble with fanatics worshipping the church. So he did not submit to the spell, getting a 23 on his charisma saving throw. Paul said that trust is a two-way street, and that if the church wants the truth, they'd ask their questions and get it without magic. Paul answered truthfully out of spite. I can't tell if the DM noticed, but he didn't call for deception checks either way. Ellis asked if Toblina is a werewolf, and Paul said no, which is true. Ellis asked if Toblina killed the 3 people in question, and I said that a monster did, which is also true. Nar, getting frustrated, asked what I did with the cage and chains. I said that I didn't do anything with the cage, purposefully leaving out the chains, which is also true. Paul then said that the truth would come out at night as a full moon was coming, but the Inquisition decided to continue with questioning. They escorted Paul to Town Hall. Eros followed in his cat form, and Floki pretended to be a drunkard to get into jail. Now that Nar had seen Floki, he informed Ellis that he needed to be questioned. Floki also saved against the ring with an 18, and was less truthful than Paul. Floki made up this huge story about how he met an old man in the woods who could transform into a wolf, and got some teeth and claws from the beast before we ran. These were genuine claws and fangs of a werewolf, the ones we had gotten from Toblina. Eventually, tired of getting nowhere, Ellis used the ring on Toblina herself. Toblina did not save against the ring. Now, Zone of Truth, which is what the ring was based on, was ruled to base the truth on what the target believed to be true. When we confronted Toblina the night we were attacked, she admitted that she was a werewolf, but had separated herself from the monster side. So when Ellis asked Toblina if she was a werewolf, she obviously said no. When Toblina was asked if she killed those 3 people, she said no, the werewolf did. Ellis turned to Nar, questioning what had happened. Nar, hoping to find the evidence he needed, requested that Toblin be questioned too. Toblin stepped up to the plate, saying he would confess. I was worried what his play would be, but my fears were unjustified. Toblin admitted to harboring a werewolf, an old man he originally took pity on. He even admitted to selling out adventurers to the Red Brands in order to keep the mistake quiet. Ellis made the decision to let Toblina, Floki, and Paul go, but to execute Toblin for his crimes. Ellis told Paul he hoped there were no hard feelings, to which Paul responded that he wasn't the one who would have hard feelings, referring to the gods. Now, Ellis knew that Paul was an amalgamation of both the divine and the arcane, as Nar had revealed everything under the power of the Truth Ring. Now, what people didn't know is that Paul is an Aasimar. Why is that important? Well, we had just hit level 3. As they escorted Paul from the prison, I had him stumble and recoil in pain and tell the others something didn't feel right. He stumbled and forced himself to cough up blood from the internal bleeding he incurred in the caves of the orcs, yelling out in pain. I had Paul activate his Radiant Soul ability, growing ethereal wings and brightening his eyes. Using the subtle casting metamagic ability, I used prestidigitation to make my voice sound like 4 pitches at once, and I said, "Let me see him," and pointed at Toblin. Everyone, including the DM, was in shock. Jack had me roll a deception check with advantage to see what would happen. 23. Ellis stepped aside to allow me to pass. I reached a hand through the bars of Toblin's cell and asked him to take it, subtle casting prestidigitation a second time. Toblin took Paul's hand, and using my last sorcery point, I declared, I, Odin the All-Father, absolve you of your sins against your brothers, and deem you innocent. With that, Paul collapsed and coughed up more blood. Nar and Elish rushed him to the chapel for healing. After a while, I decided to wake up. Ellis demanded I return with him and Toblin to Neverwinter so that the church could hail me as an avatar of Odin. Jack has tried his best for there to be consequences for our action as players, and does a fantastic job, but I still have a final ace in the hole. Paul explained to Eldest that he gets premonitions in the form of dreams from the gods that he must act on or terrible things come to pass. In the first few sessions, Paul had a dream of Gundren Rockseeker, the dwarf that had employed him to come to Phandalin in the first place, reaching out a hand of gold before being overwhelmed by black spiders. Paul explained the dream and said that he needed to find Gundren before going to Neverwinter. Ellis, not wanting to argue with the gods, allowed me to stay until Gundren was found. I believe Jack said, "You win," at this point.
You win! Perfect!
Now you're wondering, Chapter 3, what more is there to tell? I agree, there should not be more to tell. We had that in the bag, not to pat myself on the back too hard. However, Eris is, in fact, an element of unending chaos who will do anything to make sure his wife never finds him. Ellis was walking across town with Toblin to take him back to Neverwinter when Eris stopped him. Began thanking Toblin for helping him even though he's different. Ellis, after this display, had Eris arrested and taken to the inn for questioning. There, Ellis used his truth ring on Eros, who of course failed miserably. Eris was forced to admit that he was not a werewolf, and he did not kill the 3 people this Inquisition was trying to find justice for. Paul tried to intervene, offering to keep Eris under his eye while they looked for Gundren. Ellis and Jack were just so fed up with everything that was going on. We'd been playing for an hour over how long we expected this to go. Ellis was going to arrest and take Eris with him, if not just hang him then and there. Eris just wants his wife, Agatha, not to be able to find him, so he makes the only logical offer to save his life. Eris claims to know who the killer is, a woman who lives out in the woods, Agatha. So Ellis conscripts Eris and Paul to go to Agatha's hut and arrest her, or put her down. We left the next morning on horseback, and got there within 2 hours. Sweet Michael found out that morning what was happening, so he picked up Floki and followed behind us. Jack rolled for random encounters. Paul and Eris did not get anything, but Sweet Michael and Floki were ambushed by 6 goblins. These 6 goblins completely bodied Floki, almost dropped Sweet Michael to 0. Fortunately, they stopped rolling single digits on their d20s. They were left with injuries, giving them disadvantage on almost any action they could take. As for Paul and Eris, we made it to Agatha's hut and confronted her. She and Eris had it out, slinging insults about going crazy in the woods and bestiality. We all tried to surround her, but once we were all bunched up, Eris cast Thunderwave, hitting everyone, while shaping into a wolf and running off. Ellis gave chase while I stayed behind to wait for Agatha to reappear after she ether-walked to escape Eris. Eris hid in a bush, transformed into a spider, and lost Ellis. The party reconvened, and Ellis, being fed up with everything, declared that we had killed the monster responsible for the deaths. The Inquisition then went back to Neverwinter. At the end of the day, we kept everyone alive and kept the party together despite the odds. Sure, Paul's free will is almost revoked when we find Gundren, but being an avatar of Odin doesn't sound like a bad gig. Eros, despite his ethics, might still be Jack's favorite player character for some reason. I have no idea what goes through this group's head sometimes. Anyway, after that roller coaster and the amount of effort I put into this video, I need a mental break. Now, how does this go? Don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe. Something like that. Feels gross. I do stream on Twitch regularly, so the link is in the description if you want more consistent content from me. That's it for this video. I'll see you in the next one. Adios.